Evening, friends. Just want to talk real quick about look at Genesis. In the beginning, Adam and Eve in the garden, there were two trees, and there's still two trees to this day. You had the tree of life, and you had the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God told Adam and Eve, you can have anything here you want, but don't touch that tree. Now, people, you can take that literally and think that was a real tree, and the fruit that they picked off of it was a real apple, or you could look at the symbolism there, and because they were in paradise, and look at the symbolism of then and now. You had the tree of life, and I'm going to posit that that was Jesus. He's still that tree of life, right? He is the vine, and we're the branches. He's still that tree. He was hung on a tree. He's the way, the truth, and the life. And they made it. They could have had a choice back then to just live on that tree, and it's a pretty simple choice, kind of like it is today. They had the same choice we do. You can have anything in this garden, but stay on this tree. Do not touch the other tree. And of course, they chose poorly, as anybody that knows the story, right? So, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the serpent, or Satan, the deceiver, which is what it means, came in there and said, did God really say, that you would die? Because really, God said, do not touch this tree. From the day that you partake of this tree, you shall surely die. And the devil come in and he goes, did God really say that? And then he deceived them into partaking of that fruit. And that's when original sin entered the world as we know it. And Christ came to reverse that sin. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But that's when original sin came into this world, because they partook of that fruit. And if we want to think that's an apple or an orange or pomegranate or whatever, then that's fine. But I like to look at the symbolism and of what things could be, because if you look at Galatians, it talks about the fruit of the Spirit. It has nothing to do with apples and oranges. It's about your life-producing qualities that are coming out of you when Jesus is the center. Or, same book, Galatians, you have the works of the flesh. And you can juxtapose them together in the same book. And Paul was talking about the works of the flesh and the fruit of the Spirit. And when we think about that fruit, we don't think about the fruit that we eat. So why do we think about the fruit that we eat when we think about Genesis? Because we've been told to believe that. And maybe it was a real tree. Maybe it was a real apple. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I know there's a lot of symbolism in the Bible. So we go back to the garden. And like I said, the tree of life was Christ. It's always been Christ. He's always been the center. That's why the tree of life was in the center of the garden. Because he's always been the center. He always has been. He's always been. He wasn't just created 2,000 years ago. He has always been. He just come on this earth 2,000 years ago. So the knowledge of the tree and the knowledge of good and evil. So, Satan told them, he goes, well, God said stay away from that tree, because he knows once you partake of that fruit, you'll be like him. You'll be like gods. So that gets into the whole divine council worldview, which I'm not going to get in here. That's a whole other topic. But that's why God was the God of gods, the Lord of lords, the King of kings, because there were the other, gods below him. He's the only creator God, and he created everything, and he's the one that we worship. But I don't want to get into that right now about territorial spirits and gods in Genesis 11 and etc. But that's a whole nother video. But think about those trees this weekend, and think about how those trees are still impacting us today, because there's things that Christ said, don't do these things. And then he goes, but if you love me, keep my commandments. And he goes, if you've seen me, then you've seen the Father. And he talks about him being the vine and us being the branches. Well, where does fruit come from? It comes from the branches on the trees. So the fruit of the Spirit comes from the branch, which goes to the vine, which is Christ, who's the center, who's the tree of life that was in the center of the garden. I hope this video opens up your mind to some thinking that maybe you hadn't thought about before. Maybe you have, but don't write me off just yet. But think about those trees. Think about the fruit that they partook of. It wasn't the righteous fruit of Christ. It was the fruit of the flesh, because they wanted to be like gods. The devil said, God knows when you partake of this fruit, the tree that he said stay away from, he said you'll be like gods. And I can also say that today we feel like we're gods. I want to step on this just for a second, then I'm going to step away from it. The Word of Faith movement tells you that you can name it and claim it, and you can create your atmosphere, and you can change your environment, and you're the thermostat and all that. That's you being a God. We're to serve God. We serve God, the Creator. We're the branch, he's the vine, and we serve him. He's the Creator God. He's Jehovah. He's Yahweh. He's Jesus. He's Christ, the center. He's the tree of life that was in the center of the garden. And we're serving him. And if we step away from that tree, then we're serving ourselves like Adam and Eve. And we have partaken of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in 2023. All the Bible still applies. All the Bible's real. It's not a boring book unless we just want to read it sentence for sentence, word for word, you know, not give any critical thought to it, not do any deep studies into it, not sit there and talk to friends about it and bounce ideas off each other like we do every other book in the world. But when we come to the Bible, well, it's boring. I don't want to read it. It's because we don't understand it. We don't want to understand it. The devil doesn't want you to understand it. He doesn't want you on the tree of life. He wants you to eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In rant. So think about those two trees this weekend, and think about the juxtaposition in Galatians. Like I said, where Paul says, on one hand you have the works of the flesh, and on the other hand you have the fruit of the Spirit. Think about the vines and the branches that Christ talked about in the Gospels. Think about Genesis, man, where the two trees. All these things we think about, and then maybe one day I'll do a video on the Divine, World Council or Divine Council, and Genesis 6, Genesis 11, but not today. I want you to think about those trees this weekend. I want you to choose the tree that was in the center of the garden, and he should be still in the center of your life, Christ. Oh, and I forgot, like and subscribe and share.